All right. Um, okay. Good evening, guys. Um, welcome everyone. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the AWS Cloud Security West African series, right? Week six. Good evening, my name is Emmanuel Chukudi, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. Okay, so thank you all for joining us today. We are excited to have, I believe, cloud professionals on this live. Also, I believe there are also security enthusiasts and also DevOps engineers on this live today. And yeah, students are also welcome. The community members are also welcome. And thank you all for joining us from different locations across West Africa and beyond. Today's session focuses on a very important topic, which has to do with our modern software delivery, and which is DevSecOps pipeline with GitHub Actions, plus AWS CodeBuild, and also how to integrate security scans. This is our security application static testing. Um, so as an organization, I believe that we have to continue to move faster in the cloud, integrating security directly into our CI/CD workflows, which I know has become essential today. We can really see what is going out there, most especially when it has to do with security vulnerabilities. And today's session will provide valuable insights, into how we can achieve this effectively. So throughout this session, feel free to engage in the chat. Drop your questions. I'll be monitoring the questions and bringing them up. During the discussion and question and answer segment. Okay, I would love to introduce the speaker, and it is my pleasure to introduce the speaker. Today's speaker, Mr. Imo Etuk. Mr. Imo Etuk is a senior. Let me just give you a background briefing on who he is. He's a senior solution architect, with a strong experience in cloud technologies, DevOps practices, and also, I believe, secure software delivery. One of the things I know is that he's passionate about helping teams design um, scalable, and then I believe security focused, cloud solutions, while leveraging some of these modern automation and CI/CD pipelines. In today's session, he'll be walking us um, through practical approaches, in building our DevSecOps pipelines, using GitHub Actions, AWS Code Build, and automated security, scanning tools such as SAST and DAST. So please join me as we welcome Mr. Imo Etuk. So, sir, Mr. Imo Etuk, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay. Thank you very much, Manuel. So apologies, I joined a bit late. I wasn't. I just let me rest a bit, and before you know, I was left off. So hi everyone. Thank you for having me and for joining this session today. Like Emmanuel mentioned, my name is Imo Etuk. I'm an AWS community builder and also one of the community leaders. I'm here to take us through the DevSecOps pipeline with GitHub Actions and AWS Code Build and then security scan using SAST and DAST. So we're going to dive into them and you get to understand how to scan your pipelines and get the report on your S3 bucket, cloud formation and all that. We're going to just talk about those things. So this section is not intended to be like a beginner level, and I think there are some videos that there's some of our past section that talks about. the basic and generic CI/CD pipeline setup, kind of. So you may need to, or maybe I will share the link as we go along. But for now, let's dive into this section. I'm trying to bring up my draw.io. I want to have an illustration for us before we go into the section proper. Just give me a few seconds. I will bring that up. Uh, okay. So when will be speaking, if you have questions, you can feel free to drop it for me and on the chat, and the moderator Emmanuel will do us a favor in bringing that up. I'm trying to make my screen, the presentation screen, to be bigger. Let me see the mode I'm on. Okay, I think this should be better. All right. So thank you very much for your time once again. So let's go to the. Let me open. AWS DevSecOps. DevSecOps demo. Wait a minute. So we are going to be talking about DevSecOps most time and shifting security left rather than going throughout the normal process that we have to wait for the entire software development lifecycle to complete before we begin to speak about security. So things are changing, and of course, we are in the AI era where we deploy AI application, modern AI application, and all that. So in today's section, we are going to be talking about some of the things we are going to be learning about. Let me pick my pointer so we just know. So we have the agenda is that we are going to be why DevSecOps pipelines matter for cloud delivery, AWS reference pattern adapted for GitHub based teams, and where software composition analysis, SCAR, and then SAST and DAST fit into this release flow, and security of the pipeline versus security in the pipeline. And then we look at some governance metrics and implementation guidance, then key takeaway. I have done a couple of stuff which are built like like the walkthrough repository. So you have a good resource to work with, to maybe learn along as I'm going. So right now, before coming here, let me go to draw.io. I use it to just do some illustration on what we are going to do. So the tool we are going to be using is we're going to talk about GitHub, which is the combination of what we are going to. For those of us who doesn't understand what GitHub is, for the beginners who are joining us new, GitHub is an universal version control system. It's like a repository cloud-based version control system where developers collaborate and share their codes. And this is where we are going to be starting from. Then we are going to be speaking about GitHub Action, which is part of the topic. GitHub Actions. I'm not sure why my background is text is white. Okay. So GitHub Actions. So what does it really do? For those of us who have been in the DevOps space for a while, we use GitHub Actions to build a workflow, for our pipelines. We then deploy to target environment like AWS and all that. So it's part of what GitHub offer. Then this does not just happen. We need someone who is called the developer. Developer is like you and I or anyone else that write code. Let's use the human user icon here. So this is the developer who sits somewhere. Let me use this other icon. I think it's more visible. Who sits somewhere here. And then what does it do? It writes, then communicate with the with GitHub, GitHub using the GitHub Actions. This thing. You see my line. Okay. So now on the AWS part, you cannot just go to AWS and start to deploy. We need to do some what is called some prerequisite. We need to set the ground. We need to know what do we need to in order to be able to communicate with AWS. And for tight security environment, it is very wrong for you to dump the raw security, AWS security secret or whatever on your GitHub action. So the right way to call a make GitHub talk to your AWS resources or environment is using the GitHub OIDC, which I'm going to speak about more in the course of this section. So in this place, we are going to do AWS roles, like Azim roles should be here. We have something like this. And mind you, this is like, I'm going to use this icon to represent AWS on this other hand. So this is AWS. And this is AWS role. Let me call this one. So we move to AWS, call this one role. Then what else do we need in this for this presentation now? You kind of for this architecture that we want to do. So we need to have an S3 bucket where we stream the report of our security findings. So S3 bucket. I'm going to be sharing the link to this section resource on GitHub. So you clone it. It's free of charge. We don't need to bother yourself. And before you know, from A to Z, you build a deep scan pipeline in for yourself. So let me share this link. Just go, so you can build along. So I'm sharing now. So that is the link. Clone it, and then all the things you need, the structure, the documentation has everything, the command that you need to run, everything is defined. And the deployment prerequisite that you need, the outline for my deck today, everything is also here. Then the README file is well explanatory. You can go through it. Everything is embedded already. So at one click, you deploy everything. So that's how it works. So here now we have the S3 bucket. S3 bucket is to store our report. So security finding report for our executive to make decision from. So right now, for me to go from here, I need to get to my AWS, and which has to do with me setting up like the assets that I need using the OIDC, and go to call this one GitHub, duplicate this text. So this is GitHub OIDC. So yeah, what do I this thing? This is GitHub. So when we deploy, what I'm going to give you a single command. You deploy, you run it, and that will deploy AWS CloudFormation that will provision all the resources that we need at once. After that, it automatically assumed a role. There will be a role. I've also set up this. And our GitHub Actions pipeline, we are using, if you want to use the environment, remember on GitHub environment, when you're deploying your GitHub Actions, the environment variable takes prominent. You kind of have more preference over your actions secret that you add. So I have already configured this. So for those of us who want to build along with us, I would like you to go to NVD. That is let me check for the link. The National Vulnerability Database powered by NIST to get the API key that you're going to use for this section. Let me send you the link right now. So while you are here, obtain your key by going to this link, sending the page. The NVIDIA API key is free. Once you sign up, you are going to receive your user unique user identifier ID. So use that one to retrieve your API key, and please store it safely in case you want to just play around. So what we add here, we also add the AWS role ARN. So signing up for NVD API key is very straightforward. Within seconds, you get your key, then log in and retrieve your key using your UID. So here we define the secret, and we also define the variable here. In this case, is intentionally left on the CI/CD pipeline embedded. So we want to test the security scanning if it will detect the evaluation, a kind of evaluation of those variables during our report. Oh, hi, there's a kind of hard-coded environment variable. So I didn't set up that. So after this interface, if you go to, let me show us, okay, okay, still this same place. We need to check the AWS roles that are being granted to the GitHub environment for us to be able to deploy this. Let's go to action. Get that. Action, okay. So yeah, we have the pipeline which I've been running today, and right now on our report, if I go to AWS console, log on. So right now we have a S3 bucket set up. I want to show us the report that we have at the moment. Let me increase this a bit. So you can see my screen. So right now we have the S3 bucket that stores our report. If you open it, we have some report here. So each time the pipeline is triggered and the deep scan test is carried out, a report is generated. And this report, it is never best practice. We all know that, to make your S3 buckets open. So what I did, I'm going to show us one command for you to generate the executive view URL that they can just view the report and download using the web browser, and that expires in one hour. So that's the best way to share this report, because it's not good for you to open your S3 bucket wide open. Then I just trying to show us this structure because we might not have the time to go through everything again. Then here we have the logs that streams to CloudWatch. As soon as you deploy or the scan is being carried out. So we go to log management. Once you provision everything, following the guide I provided, you're going to get all this provision at once. Look at the log stream so far for everything I've run. Okay, so now I'm going to the CloudFormation console, who that actually provision all these resources. You see my stack is complete. So can view the resource and all that. It provisions your bucket, CodeBuild project, CodeBuild service, action role, and all that. So if you open here, you're going to see the OIDC that I spoke about, that is assumed by GitHub to be able to grant access here. So for those of us who are new, you need to first of all have an IAM user. For the purpose of this demo, I just have to grant the IAM user admin access, but most time it is not advisable. You need to streamline this to like this is deploying cloud formation and all that. You need to grant roles based on job specific function and all that. So, but you need to have your IAM user created. You need to check your security credentials and then don't enable console access except necessary. Then after that, you get your access keys, then configure using your VS Code terminal or whatever terminal you're using, then grant access to deploy these resources. So that's how the IAM structure looks like on AWS. Then after I've shown us these resources, we have our code build project, which is provision using that same CloudFormation code. So now this is our repository. Remember, CodeBuild is AWS managed project managed environment where you can use to store your build project and all that. So these are all the build that we run and are succeeded. So now if I go back to my architecture, here we have CloudWatch. And CloudWatch logo is this, okay? So we have CloudWatch here. That this is S3 bucket. So here we have the CloudWatch, the stream log. So you can actually just add maybe additional security hub from AWS. If let's see if I have a security hub icon here. This is optional, not mandatory. So all this works together to make sure that you have a very good experience in terms of managing your distance. So here is the CloudWatch. CloudWatch logs. So this guy is a developer on this hand. So this is a GitHub. Okay, so these are the tool that I'm using for this section today, and which we are going to go through everything together. Now for deployment, I've also added the generic architecture, the flow on the README file. So once you go through it, you're going to be able to understand everything that this is all about and how the flow looks like. So now let's look at, let's go straight to the slide, which we are going to speak about. So going here, why DevSecOps pipelines? First and foremost, DevSecOps stands for development, security, and operations. So it's shifting a bit from the usual DevOps that we do day to day, which is development and operations and all that, into infusing security in the middle. We call it shifting left security. That is moving from having to wait till the end of the whole entire life cycle of software lifecycle development or whatever, to infusing security at every stage in our pipelines. So that's what DevSecOps is advocating. And then modern teams need release speed without turning security into a late stage manual checkpoint. So that is why the automation comes in this case. You don't need to wait till everything is fine and all that before you can now think of bringing security, which can in form of a kind of affect the entire process, where you need to start all over in terms of at that point where you have to wait for everything to finish. You may be able to, you might even kind of miss or maybe incur the debt already in kind of because of the vulnerability that I've achieved. So this section is about building a practical DevSecOps delivery flow using GitHub Actions and for orchestration. Then AWS Code Builder for managed build and scan execution. And then and also it also offers us the opportunity to explore the layer security checks that are involved in our pipeline. And DevSecOps means integrating security, like I mentioned, into every delivery lifecycle in our in our pipelines or in a software delivery process. Then we are going to be hearing terms like SAT, that's a static application security testing, which this kind of security method it helps us to analyze source code. We analyze the source code and compile artifacts for any insecure pattern that may be discovered in that code. So right now we have the point. So these are why. Then different teams often build delivery pipelines differently, which increases compliance efforts and slows onboarding. We also have the DevSecOps pipeline shift security left and makes them repeatable, visible, and enforceable along the line. So these are majorly what this does. So I mentioned shifting left before. So shift left means moving validation earlier in the life cycle, security validation, usually closer to the coding and pull requests. So it's no longer like waiting to the final product release. You can now think of security. So compliance effort is the time spent moving from maybe proving controls were followed and all that. So this actually reduced that. So the goal is simple: ship faster, reduce rework, and catch vulnerabilities before production. So that is what the goal is. Now, core design principle: we have security in the pipeline and security of the pipeline, which I'm going to speak about. So security in the pipeline in this case, SCAR that is offers us the software composition analysis offer us the opportunity to detect vulnerability dependencies in our code. Then the other one is also the SAST, automated static application security testing for code defect and insecure patterns. These are methods for you to ensure security in the pipeline. Then dynamic application security testing against a deploy staging environment. When we move from one environment to another, you need to implement this. Now, when you let me just say security in the pipeline in a layman way means you protecting the pipeline itself from being misused, like the credential leakage, unauthorized change, and yeah, you need to ensure that least privilege, meaning giving only the permission required for a task and nothing broader. You cannot be broadening the scope of the permission you give at this stage. Also, you need to ensure that encryption at rest is probably implemented and all that. So this quality gate that stops risky promotions. When you have an environment, I just spoke about a GitHub environment where you have the environment level and also the GitHub action level that you have to define your secret. Most best practice in production is better you go for the environment level of adding secrets rather than the GitHub action level. So security of the pipeline, this one has to do with the protecting the pipeline itself is the security pipeline. Then security in the pipeline is about the checks the pipeline performs on the applications. Now, if you have a pipeline right now, and the pipeline is meant to build, test, and deploy, and if it doesn't pass test, it failed. So that means the pipeline is looking for security vulnerabilities within that pipeline, and that has to do with your application that you are deploying. What the security of the pipeline is that you are trying to protect the pipeline itself from being abused and from unauthorized access and all that. So here you need to ensure least privileged identity and access management roles for every build actions that you are doing. Then you need to store your secret through parameter store or AWS secret manager. You need to carry out auditability with CloudTrail and configuration monitoring. You need to ensure encryption for code, artifact, and pipeline traffic. Then that is, if you have questions, let me know. And Emmanuel, feel free to interrupt because I've left the screen for question screen. So why standardize the pipeline? Why do we need to standardize our pipeline? Standardizing pipelines reduces a kind of cognitive loads from the team for the teams and make audit and governance easier for the platform or security organization. If you imagine if you are a platform engineer and then the pipeline is not well standardized and you have a couple of stuff on your plate and you begin to deal with a lot of things when the escalation come, so the work can be very tedious at that point. So best practice is standardizing everything. So AWS DevOps pipeline accelerator position templates as reusable, continuous integration and continuous delivery accelerators instead of each team rebuilding from scratch. So you can explore this on your own time. So standardization improves consistency across products and makes quality get easier for compliance teams to enforce. Another point is also that reusable templates improve delivery velocity because teams focus on application logic, not pipeline plumbing. Now, the thing is that if you are using a reusable pattern, is really the best template whereby you don't have time to go about doing everything from scratch. You just pick the template and then reuse them. So that's the best practice. Configurable templates support GitHub Actions, AWS native services, and other delivery tooling without losing control. So now we move down to reference tool chain. Here, like I mentioned, we have GitHub Actions. We also have AWS CodeBuild. We have artifact layer. We have the deployment layer. We have the findings layer, and we have the governance layer. In this our exercise today. So from GitHub Action governed PR, push triggers, workflow orchestration, and OpenID Connect federation to AWS. AWS CodeBuild, on the other hand, builds and run and test runs the application itself. Software composition analysis and static application security testing execution is also carried out within that space. Now we also have the S3 bucket that stores the artifacts. Then this output produced are immutable build output. So report retention is also built in there. Like I mentioned, we have, I think I showed us some reports when I go through. Okay. So the report retention for trigger run so far, we have our report. This is our report. So the output of our report is that, okay, at the end of the day, let me see if I can get the link, which I'm going to show us how to generate that. So let's say I have a link to a temporary, no, maybe it must have expired because more than 1 hour I generate this. So if I visit the seat, it has expired. So the time was I set. So when you deploy from the output of what you deploy from the GitHub repo, I shared the demo resource. The time was set to 1 hour when generating this report, and it expired exactly 17:34. That is 1 hour. So don't worry, we are going to also generate the new URL and you get to see the report itself. So in your S3 bucket, you're going to have the report, you're going to have the source. Sources are simply the sources where this report are coming from, which is GitHub. If you download this zip file and able to view it, it will give you a complete application structure, a complete structure of your of the code we have on our VS Code. So let me bring that. I'll show you that can be okay. So what I downloaded right now from the S3 gives me all I have on my GitHub, showing the build specs file, which is a set of instruction given to AWS CodeBuild and all that. So all these things are there on our GitHub repository. So let's go back to the slide. Now in deployment, we have the staging environment, of course, that we know, which is like a replica of prod. Prod environment is built mostly from the staging environment, otherwise known as sometimes the UAT or UAT environment, that user acceptance testing environment, or some people call it just QA, jump from QA to prod straight. So it all depends on what works for you or our individual as individual organization. So what works for you is what matters. So now let's continue with we have the findings. You can paste the result to Lambda if you have the time. Then AWS also has AWS security finding format, ASFF, for information. Then governance layer has to do with the CloudTrail auditing, AWS config rules, and SNS notification and approvals, which needs to be embedded and all that. So GitHub Actions is what trigger the workflow. While CodeBuild, on the other hand, execute the heavy build and scan jobs in our jobs today. Then artifacts are stored immediately on S3 bucket. Deployment promote the same build, and then findings are transformed, and governance services monitor the whole process. So that's what this flow means. Then artifact means the package output of a build. It usually comes in a zip image format for those of us who doesn't look at it, who doesn't know what artifact is. So immutable means that this artifact is not rebuilt or modified between stages. Then, of course, the SSS, which are ASFF, which I just spoke about, is a kind of a normalized structure for security findings in AWS. So you can read more about this on your spare time. So now we have the hybrid architecture, reference architecture. Now in stage one, the developer does what? You push or pull. Those are the two actions you do. Then after you pull, you commit and push. So now get to the stage two. GitHub Actions validates an assumed AWS role via OpenID Connect. Now CodeBuild runs tests plus software composition analysis and then static application security at that stage. Now step 4 is where the findings are normalized and sent to Security Hub. If you best practice, we can extend the functionality of what I have on the demo repository to cover a lot of all this stuff. Step 5, approve, build, deploy to start staging and run upswap set attack proxy. Dynamic application security comes into this stage. So you can see, I'm still going to let me explain the SAST, SCAR, and DAST. So now, what does it do? The scan type is that we have 3 scan type, which is the static. We have the static application security and testing, SAST. Then this are kind of it checks the application source code and coding patterns within your this thing. So what it runs against your app file. Let me see if I have my VS Code open already. So please, can you reshare the GitHub repository? Okay, I just came to see your chat now. Let me look for it. If you have questions, like I mentioned, just let me know. So the GitHub repository is here. Is it? I wonder why my system. Let me do like this. Put this one off. Okay, let me get the repo again for you. So this is the repository. The link to the repo. So if you look through the community YouTube channel, you're going to find some basic CI/CD pipelines videos. I think there was a section that made several sessions on that before. So you can really go through the basic first before coming to this one. So let's go back to our slide. I've spoken about this. So let me move straight. If you have questions, let me know. So stage one is pull request controls. Use branch protection. This is very, very important. This helps you to catch issues early before consuming more build minutes or exposing downstream environment to vulnerabilities. So run quick lint, think test, and unit test, ISA linking, basic policy checks with GitHub Actions. Use GitHub OpenID Connect Federation to AWS instead of storing long-lived AWS access keys in GitHub secrets. Fail early on critical issues. So expensive downstream build stages do not start unnecessarily. So you don't need to, it's best to fail early and all that. So before you now wrap yourself into trouble. So we go to stage two, where we build SCAR and then SAST. Then SCAR in this place is third-party libraries and packages vulnerabilities. So this looks for dependencies installed for the app, such as npm packages, and will scan against them. Then best time to use this early during the CI phase. So SAST and SCAR happen at CI phase. Let's be clear. So while you need to like CodeBuild packages the application and retrieve scanner tools for all configuration from parameter store. Then run upsap dependency check for software composition analysis to identify common vulnerabilities and exposure, CVEs, in dependencies. Run SonarQube, PHP stand, or an equivalent static application security testing SaaS tool based on the application stack. So most of these things falls under SAST. So note, SonarQube is a SAST tool. PHP stand and maybe I think PyTest and all that. You can make more findings on this. Upload report to S3 or code artifact and block promotion when severity thresholds are exceeded. Now stage three is staging and DAST. This is where dynamic application testing comes in, security testing comes in. Deploy the already built artifact to a staging environment and to avoid drifts between test and release. Run upsap set attack proxy against the staging URL to validate runtime behavior and web attack surface. This is where the DAST come in, and DAST is run after the app can start and respond to HTTP request. Once the application is running, it's a running application. So the correct place is after deployment to a non-production environment that mirrors reality closely for testing. Now I want to go to staging environment. This staging environment simply mirrors the production. That is in most cases, it's called a pre-production environment. So this is where you use the DAST to validate before final release. And I mentioned SAP. So SAP is an open source web application security scanner that is used for DAST. Attack surface means the internal when someone is reaching your application externally, and this person mostly might be an attacker that can interact with your application somewhere. So now sending dynamic application security testing findings to the same aggregation channel used for software composition analysis and static application security testing results is what you should also do. Now use a manual approval get before prod when risk compliance and or change management requires it. Then we go to findings aggregation and visibility. A Lambda function can pass. Now let me explain a bit. Different scanners, outputs, maybe format Kind of normalizing them gives leadership, security teams, and developers one reporting model. So like now, AWS Lambda is AWS serverless, which we all know. Security hubs aggregate and correlate security findings across AWS services and integrated tools. So single pane of glass, one consolidated view rather than many disconnected dashboards is the best practice here. So you don't need to put your findings in different dashboards, whereby you have a single pane of glass, single central place. That is AWS Security Hub come into play. So Security Hub becomes the single pane of glass of vulnerability findings across build stages. CloudWatch and SNS can notify teams about pipeline state changes, failed scans, and approval actions. Centralized visibility improves triage, reporting, and audit readiness. So security of the pipeline in this case, let's speak more about this. So if the pipeline is insecure, the scan result and deployment controls can never be trusted. Let's start with, so the first security step start with the pipeline being secure itself. So in this case, you need to protect code. I spoke about restricting access to IAM roles and all that. I don't want to repeat that. At least we've spoken about it. I think we have the knowledge now. So protect code and artifact with encryption at rest, and then TLS in transit. Never you promote HTTP over HTTPS. So store scanner tokens, passwords, and API keys in parameter store or AWS Secret Manager instead of plain text variables. Secret Manager and parameter store are AWS services for you to handle secret and configuration securely in your code. The other one is also use CloudTrail for API auditing and AWS config rules to detect risky pipeline configuration drifts. CloudTrail records API activity, which we all know, for auditing purpose. AWS config, on the other hand, tracks configuration states and helps detect drifts or non-compliance settings in your environment. So these are tools you should leverage at the appropriate time. So in this case, software completion analysis, that's security in the pipeline. This catches third-party dependencies, risk before packaging or deployment. I'm recapping all this so we all understand. So, and both of them happen at the CI stage. This is what we have to note. Static application security testing SAST detects insecure coding patterns and defect directly from source. Like I mentioned, in your app folder, where you can have something like the source, like SRC and maybe the test folder. That is where your test is being written. You can have something like that. So dynamic application testing DAST test the deployed application from the outside and validate runtime exposure. It comes at the staging environment. That is a kind of a pre-production environment interface. So now let's check another point. We have for cloud native workloads, you need to extend the pattern with ISA, container image, and policy as code scanning. This is very important. So policy as code means expressing governance and security rules in machine readable form. Container image scanning checks software packages and vulnerabilities, image used for deployment. Like you cannot AWS have a managed image repository. So where you can have your own this thing secured, but you can use Docker, maybe the paid version if it's production and all that. So we move to implementation blueprints. Have I spoken about this before? I think I'm going back and forth. Am I repeating my own slide? Okay, let's move down to, I think when I started that, let's speak about metrics that matter in this case. Lead time for change from commit to approved deployment. So good DevSecOps metrics show whether controls are slowing things down or whether the findings are being fixed fast enough. So lead time for change measures elapsed time from committed changes to successful deployment. In this case, then percentage of build that pass security gates on first attempt. Then mean time to remediate measures how long it takes to do. Let's go to mean time to remediate. So how long it takes to fix identified issues. Then we have the number of vulnerabilities that escape into production. This is very risky most time. So each account of approved risk exceptions. So we have a common pitfall that you might likely fall into or come across in your day-to-day engineering life. So using long-lived AWS credentials in GitHub instead of OpenID Connect based federation. Most pipeline failures come from bad credential handling, like I mentioned before, weak tuning and maybe broken promotion discipline rather than from lack of tools. We have the tools. Everything is there. Treating dynamic application security testing as a production-only activity instead of scanning a control staging environment or target. Blocking on every findings without severity tuning, baseline, or an exception process. Now, rebuilding artifact between stages, which breaks traceability and reproducibility. Ignoring ISC and container image scan for modern cloud native, even with AI applications that we build these days. So these are common pitfalls that you might have. So key takeaway is that you need to standardize your pipeline templates, improved delivery speed, consistency, and control. GitHub Actions plus AWS CodeBuild is a strong hybrid pattern for teams ready build on GitHub. So standardizing pipelines, separate the security viewpoints, centralizing findings, and promoting only trusted artifact is very key. Yeah. So yeah, we also have the design separately for security in the pipeline and security of the pipeline. Know the difference and approach it very well. So aggregate findings centrally and promote artifact only when policy gates are satisfied. So that is the end of my slide. Thank you very much for listening. But let's jump to the code interface. That is the CI/CD. That is our IDE. I'm seeing some question here. Are the SAST tool native on AWS? Can you reference them also for a multi-cloud and they suggested tools? Sure. They are not AWS native tools. They are open source tools. So one findings I would like to do, sure, and they also can be used across multi-cloud environment. You know, when you are deploying from maybe, let's assume you use GitHub Actions to deploy, you can set multiple target environment using your pipelines. You can deploy to your on-premises, can deploy using a single pipeline, but I think best practice is to break your pipeline anyway into smaller and manageable format. So I spoke about build spec file, which is a set of instruction file that tells AWS CodeBuild exactly what commands to run in each phase. In practical terms, it is the runbook for build container. So that's what you need to know. So it is written in YAML format. It defines the phases such as install and pre-build, build, and post-build. It also controls tools, commands, and output. So yeah, for us to get started, let me quickly launch my VS Code and bring that forward. I'm going to be my second screen. I'm not sure why it's not coming up. I'm going to just be sharing this screen like this. So, okay, let's work with the one at a time. So this is my own code output. So I spoke about DAST and SCAR. and during the slide explanation. So you see that we have them happening at this stage. You see, okay, let me just increase this from a little bit. I think we can see it clearly now. So here I have my app, which is this is where the SCAR and SAST happen. I need AWS credit to practice. Please, is AWS no. The very code pipeline, not a CI/CD tool like GitHub Actions. Why do we need to use both in deployment? Okay, AWS code pipeline. Remember that recently, before now, we have AWS code commit, which to its blessed memory he's dead. Let's put it that way. So code commit it was more like a code repository environment. So I think for now, I think GitHub is actually standardized. I'm not sure if AWS, I'm not sure what happened next, but according to even my knowledge right now, I think AWS is now relying more on GitHub for a kind of version control system and all that. So I don't think there's any. So GitHub, AWS code pipeline and GitHub Action, yes, is the same. So you can store your code in GitHub, and then let your code pipeline point to your file on GitHub repository. So we didn't treat GitHub, we didn't treat code pipeline today. So for AWS credit, I think I'm not sure, Emmanuel, is there a quiz after the section where users can get some convene credit? So I'm not sure, maybe the moderator is going to respond to the AWS credit. And if you are a builder, congratulations to all builders who are February set. I just got myself renewed today. I got the email yesterday. So if you have been renewed, of course, you're going to get $500 worth of credit we can use to build and practice. So that's another way of getting the credit. You're also entitled to exam voucher, so it doesn't just stop at credit. Okay, so yeah, I have the risk. I also have the server JS. This is a simple, just file that help us build tests and all that. So I want to get this file and explain very well for us. How many of us have signed up for our NVD API key? That is the National Vulnerability Database. It's free. You can get it and just practice alone. So now we have what's the time? 2 minutes left. Okay. Can this button be used? Okay. So now everything is set. So what we just need to do, because of our time, I just need to modify my code. I need the pipeline to trigger. Once again, I just need to add maybe just modify my code a bit and then have the pipeline run, because we don't need to do major modification at this point. All what you need to do is that if I go to my terminal and we have this, you must be in the repository. Right now, let me check the location I am. Okay, I need to cd into DevSecOps -demo -pack folder. That is where the code is. So if I cd into it, we have the CI, we have the app, we have the infra. So the CI folder right now has the DAST and the SCAR SAST, this thing that is here. So if you view it, it is the one that built before the actual deployment, which has to do with where DAST comes in. So another one is also that for docs, you can review these are all there. Then for the infra, by setting up your AWS environment, configuring your IAM user account, do not use the root account for best practice. You just need to go to the repository and go to docs. You're going to see AWS auth command that are here. First of all, you need to install AWS CLI. If you have installed it, check the version you have, run the AWS configure, then supply your details. Choose US is one zone, that's what I'm using. Then verify authentication. If you have that, you can get this authentication, that is security token service. You can run this and you can get that your account has been configured. So you must have this. If you have seen this, meaning you have access to AWS environment and can deploy. So immediately you get that, all what you just need to do is to run this at a stretch. It will deploy everything that you have there. Be mindful of the template file directory. Yours might be different. This is where you're going to likely face error. So be mindful of the template file directory. Then configure your GitHub so that you can generate the OIDC at once and map to the GitHub repository. My organization here represents my GitHub name. If you go to my profile, you see that that's my name. I represent my GitHub name here. This is my name. So that is what you need to put there. And also the repo is what you need to also point it to. AWS. Then after that, you need to run, let me see the command you need to run to obtain that. In fact, okay, all the commands are here. So you don't need to even leave this particular document. So what this does, what does it deploy? Deploy all these services. And also the IAM trust policy that allows GitHub Action, which is lying on this particular repository. It will skip this phase if already exists. And also for the management report, which we are going to do, let me just quickly run this code. Let me do like a modification of simple doc. I can just use a git. I think I have a git branches at my main, so I don't need to do anything. So I have not made changes in that case. So I can just do echo live section trigger. You just need to trigger the report and see. That is then I'll write it to a file called live dash, maybe just demo like trigger. Just want to trigger this .md file. So live section trigger. Okay, if that is not working, let's just open. I don't want to take our time because the time is, let's go to this. Okay, there's a make file. I didn't explain this. So make file help us to, let me quickly just do a bit of explanation of what make file does in this case. So yeah, Makefile in this repository provides simple automation for common developer and demo tasks. It defines the targets such as packages, when to run the script, and learn Python, this thing. So let's go to, okay, you created that file, yeah. Okay, I have some changes in Make now. So let me just complete this by doing a simple commit and push operation, and then have some changes for it to trigger the pipeline. So the pipeline triggers from the main branch. You can feel free to set where you want to do. I can do git add live dash demo dash trigger this dash trigger .md. So it will just add that. I can do git commit dash this. I'm just trying to trigger this from the trigger fresh DevSecOps. demo run. So git push origin main. So now we have a push. The pipeline should trigger by itself. There should be action here. So if we go to, you can come here, monitor your pipeline. So what does it do? This is where at the fast feedback stage, where the dependencies are installing. This is where the scar is checking, getting ready. Immediately it gets the feedback, it commences the deep scan process. So the deep scan phase, once you're able to get your AWS credential configured correctly, the authentication will not take time. So you see, it starts the SCAR and SAST at the CI stage. It will wait for the build job to be done in your CodeBuild, AWS CodeBuild in this case. So if you go to our environment, let's say right now, this is we are in the DevSecOps deep scan. Okay, this is the project that we are. This is the CodeBuild. We're going to see one more successful run, but let's go to our bucket. I need to get the latest report. I go to S3 bucket, open the bucket we are using, then check the report. Right now, there are about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 7 folders. So now let's run a command for us to get the list of folders and all that. For you to get those folders, run this command. We need to, now for every report, for you to retrieve your report, you need to take note of your commit SHA. For every run, there's a fresh SHA, so you need to append that. If you run this command right now, let's say for us to view an existing report, which is on that S3 bucket, you just run this command that I want to run now. Let me close this out. So if I paste this, so yeah, I want to explain this thing. So we are all familiar with the AWS S3 list command. So this is the bucket name. If you go to our browser, you're going to see the bucket name starting from here to this place. Look at what the bucket name is. So you need to copy this and then speak to it, then query the report folder. This is the SHA commit from GitHub to show that all the reports, the GitHub and these things are talking to each other. Recursively means list all the report that we have within our S3 bucket. Now for us to generate a pre-signed S3 pre-signed URL that expires in 1 hour, you just need to run this command. Remember, you can generate a pre-signed URL using it is a feature of S3 bucket, S3 AWS provides. So we have that this thing. So yeah, since I've obtained the list of bucket that I have, or the report, I can just use this one to generate executive report findings, which the executive can view this pipeline, the certain run. Now, okay, let's say our pipeline is complete. Okay, still running. I'm going to run a report and retrieve the latest report. Now, let's just complete. It's just at the, okay, now it's waiting for DAST build. This is like it has passed the SAST scan and SAST build and scan stage, moving down to this is like the pre-prod staging environment now that we are in the pipeline. So yeah, I'm able to get this report accurate because this report is very accurate because we integrated the NVD API key, which I want you to also do that and all that. So even in your day-to-day, this thing as allowed by your organization, you can use it. You can also integrate advanced open source tools in what you are doing. So our pipeline is still running. So this is how this report works. So this report now within the GitHub the repository. You're going to see a script folder. So script folder here generate executive summary because many formats of that report exist. JSON format, the executive cannot really quickly interpret JSON format for that. So that's why this script is there for us to for which help build this front page and put the report in a readable format for as non-technical and like the executive people who make decision. So here is telling us that when this critical, if the critical here is high, configured get findings at or above critical fail the stage. If the finding here is critical, if it report, it will fail the stage. Here, once I find out from my code, remember I said that the environment is there in the application code. If you go to my, let's say, even the pipeline itself, this is deliberate. Do not do it in your environment or production. Sorry, our time is fast spent, but I'm done already. Just need to show something. So if you go to the workflow itself, this is the pipeline. If you look at the environment variable, what you need to extract after you use after you have created your resources using the CloudFormation script is you need to get your region, your project name, CodeBuild project name, the artifact bucket name, and all that. And that is being embedded here. Look at where I define these things here. In production, you need to pass this through the environment variable, not directly on the pipeline. So these are major things. So now after the pipeline, let's see if that succeeded. So you can query the last. So these are succeeded. So what you do in this case to generate a fresh report for your management is to click this SHA and copy this number. The last number in this place will give you the latest report based on each pipeline run, pipeline trigger. So when you pick that number, remember the first code that run, first command. Let me clear my screen. The first command I run is in the first command you get this is okay, this one. So we just need to replace this SHA with the one I just copied, which is for the recent completed and successful pipeline. So yeah, and if you go to our S3 bucket, this one, though this is going to list all the report that we have. So we have new report there. Let's go to S3 bucket quickly. Then report. Let's check the details of this. So if you look at this 544C, and from what we have here, 5. Okay, wait, let me check if. Okay, let's go to. Let me check that again. So now I have. Okay, this is what I have now in the report. I can now generate the executive report. So to generate the executive report, just record the last command that we use. Then replace this SHA with the recent one that we just did. So let's quickly just do that because of the time. The report will not be, there will be no major differences, but I'm just showing us how to get that report out because we didn't really do much code modification at that stage. So you have this S3 bucket. So instead of you to open your bucket to the entire wall, you can do this. And this is where to get to. So Emmanuel, you can come on board. Apologies, I passed the time. But then if you have question, you can reach out to me after the section. Otherwise, you call it a day. Hi, Emmanuel, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so since we have gone past our time, and I've seen that at least you've been able to answer about two questions here. Okay, so I think we'll be coming to the closing of this session. And as we come to the end of today's session, I would like to sincerely thank our speaker once again, Mr. Imo Eto, for sharing his knowledge and insights with us. Um, Thank you as well to everyone who joined the participated in today's discussion. We hope that this session has given you practical insight, into this DevSecOps practices, and how secure CI/CD implementation works. So please, I would like us to stay connected with the AWS Cloud Security User Group West Africa, for events, upcoming events, and learning opportunities. At least I've been able to learn a lot today. Um, yeah. So as for the AWS credits, I think the hosts or the organizers of the program will be able to communicate to us probably on LinkedIn for us that are following. I think the winners will be announced, for the credits. I think there was somebody who asked for credits. Yeah. So once again, thank you so much, Mr. Imo, for this wonderful opportunity. Um, I would like to say a good evening to everyone, and thank you once again for joining us. So
Okay.
do have
Thank
a
you,
wonderful
everyone.
evening. So
Yeah.
if you have any question, feel free to reach out to him. Feel free to reach out to him. All right. Good night and
Okay. Good night.
good evening. Thank you.